Welcome to Habeas Treasures, where I try to decipher this book, There's Treasure Inside by Jon Collins-Black, in order to find one of the 5 hidden treasures. On today's episode, I'll continue my breakdown of The Lion's Share Box and discuss why I think the key to finding the starting point of the hunt might actually be found in the last chapter. What? Let's begin. In an earlier video, I covered some potential clues in the How to Read This Book section that begins on page 16. Let's take a look now at another interesting sentence from that section, the very first one. JCB starts off the section by writing, "If you are someone with no interest in finding the physical treasures I have hidden, then reading this book should be a straightforward exercise." It seems like in this opening line, the author is indicating that the way in which you read the book is important to figuring out the order of the clues. I think one way of interpreting this is that instead of reading the book straightforward, meaning front to back, maybe you're supposed to read it backwards, starting with the last chapter. This could also be why, later in the same section, he gives this advice. The first thing I would advise is to read this book once through thoughtfully. If the first clue you need to find is in the last chapter of the book, then this is very good advice because until you've read the last chapter, you wouldn't know where to start. Okay, so let's assume for a moment that the first clue to the hunt is contained in the last chapter. What type of clue would you expect to find? Well, personally, I would hope to find an initial clue that would narrow down the search area. For instance, maybe a clue that would indicate which state the treasure is hidden in. Now, let's take a look at the last chapter of part 1, chapter 23, and see if we can find a clue to a state. The chapter is called Sing Your Own Special Song and subtitled Finding Treasures Along the Way. This title is a reference to the Cass Elliot song, Make Your Own Kind of Music, that the author mentions at the end of the previous chapter. In describing the song, he writes, "Kimberly and I met in 2013. We began our family in 2017. As I write this, we were married only a few months ago. Kimberly's favorite song was originally performed and recorded by Cass Elliot. It's called Make Your Own Kind of Music. It was the very last song played and sung at our wedding reception. This song reflects much of who we are and how we live. And, in a way, this is what our final main chapter is all about. Heading out on your own special path and collecting every possible treasure you can find along your way." What I found interesting about this passage from my research is that Cass Elliot wasn't actually the first person to record the song, Make Your Own Kind of Music. That honor goes to the group Will O.B.'s in 1968. Cass Elliot didn't release her version of the song until 1969. Now, this could just be an honest mistake on the author's part, and we should ignore it. But if, as some suspect, he's including mistakes to point us to clues, then the music group Willoughby's might be the clue. If you've watched my earlier video about the embarrassing product demo story he tells in chapter 2, then you may remember that I made the connection to the famous blind melon bee girl from the music video No Rain. This led me to hypothesize that maybe JCB included the story as a clue pointing to the extremely dry southern part of the beehive state, Utah. Who knows if this is right, but I also did find it curious that JCB mentions that it was the very last song played and sung at his wedding. Now, in the book, JCB doesn't provide any further insight into his wedding. However, he does provide a brief glimpse into what it was like to be there on his Facebook account. Here, watch this.
I've always had the dream that when my life is said and done, God would look at our marriage and say, "You guys are freaking one." Now it's our time to show the world what a perfect couple can be. We can do it together, you and me, but mostly me.
You and me, but mostly me, are gonna change the world forever.
So a couple of things stood out to me about this. First, is this post is one of the few Jon Collins-Black social media posts that exists from the pre-treasure hunt era. It seems like he purposely tried to scrub his personal internet history before releasing the treasure hunt. But he decided for some reason not to take this video down. And second, the video was posted 8 or 9 months after he got married and just months before he launched the treasure hunt. So the timing is a bit unusual as well. Why wait so long to post this video? And finally, and perhaps most interesting to me, is that the song Jon and Kimberly are singing is a modified version of a song from the musical The Book of Mormon. And it turns out that Utah got the nickname the Beehive State to symbolize the industriousness, perseverance, and community spirit of early Mormon pioneers who settled the region in 1847. That's right, Utah doesn't actually have a lot of bees. It's named the Beehive State because of its Mormon heritage. Okay, but I probably know what you're thinking. Yo, HT, you live in Utah. Do you really think the treasure could be hidden there? Great question. And I think to answer that question more definitively, we should see if there's a major clue in chapter 23 that would lock it down like JCB did at his wedding. And I think I have something that could work. Here's what I mean. Chapter 23 tells the story of Jon and Kimberly making a special Egyptian necklace during their creative night together to include in the treasure. This leads into JCB describing a bit about ancient Egyptian culture and the 5 gifts of Hathor. He writes, "The 5 gifts were represented by the 5 fingers of each person's left hand. Every day, all Egyptians were asked to look at their fingers and to count at least 5 blessings they were grateful for." Now, I think this is the clue that we were supposed to find. 5 fingers. And I think he provides the way we're supposed to think about it in the second to last paragraph of the chapter. Here he writes, "Inspired by the histories of the items in our treasure, I began this book talking about the meaning of the word treasure." Well, it turns out that the meaning or origin of the word treasure comes from the Latin word thesaurus. So, let's use a thesaurus to come up with another word for the 5 gifts of Hathor that you can count on the 5 fingers of your left hand. The most common synonym for finger is digit. So the 5 fingers the Egyptians counted their blessings on could also be referred to as 5 digits, like the 5 digits that form a zip code that could provide us a starting point for the hunt. Anyway, that's all I've got for today's video. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Yo, HT, why are you leaving us on a cliffhanger like that? Come on, tell us the zip code. Well, it's because I have to go and get ready for the Seeker Summit Treasure Convention in Tucson next week. And also, I haven't been able to come up with the exact zip code yet. But if you're planning on being in Arizona next week at the convention, please come up and say hi. I'd love to meet you and get your thoughts on where you think the lion's share could be. Hope to see you then.